This is Huntsville Sports Weekly, where we talk all things Huntsville, Texas sports, Hornets, Bearcats, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Rob Hipp and Josh Criswell.
All right, friends, it's that time of the week again, and happy Wednesday to you. The last day of the month, actually, September the 30th. Crazy to think that we are already through September. I'm Rob Hipp, sports director here at KSAM, and is joined as always with my good friend Josh Criswell, the Huntsville Item sports editor. Josh, how are things going today, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Just getting ready for week one, part two, I guess.
Well, we're excited. We're going to hear from athletic director and head coach Rodney Southern today of the Huntsville Hornets. But, and one of the questions I'll ask him, and we'll talk about basically going through a scrimmage and then a practice. So finally, getting that first game coming up on Friday, we'll talk about that. And then also looking a little bit at the Southland with the upcoming schedule, 6 games scheduled, Josh, starting 2 of them each month starting in February. So excited about those things, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously Huntsville had last week's game canceled by Nederland due to positive COVID-19 cases in its athletic department. But Huntsville back at it this week, had a really good intra-squad scrimmage, which followed up a really good scrimmage against Lufkin the week before. So, they looked really sharp, but now I'm just really excited to see what they can do against an opponent in a real game, and excited to talk to Coach Southern about that.
Awesome. And what's some new things going on? What's going on with the Item right now? I know that you guys put out the magazine, just about a month or so ago. What else has been happening there at the Huntsville Item, Josh?
Just a lot, kind of getting into full swing on Saturday. I'll be out covering the first, I guess Sam Houston State officially started their fall practice earlier this week, but going to be out there Saturday covering their first full pad practice. They're really going to be the first thing new doing there. So watch for stories on that, over the weekend and in Tuesday's paper. And, just aside from that, just covering all the high school teams in the area, all sports, whether it be football, volleyball, cross country, you name it, we're covering them. That's for Huntsville, of course, and then also Alpha, Omega, New Waverly, and Trinity. So, just go to itemonline.com/sports. And as always, go to itemonline.com/subscribe. And we're happy to have you welcomed on as one of our new subscribers.
Awesome. Well, we'll step aside for just a brief moment. When we come back, we'll join and bring in head coach Rodney Southern of the Huntsville Hornets. Stay with us, friends. This is Huntsville Sports Weekly. We'll be right back here in just a few moments. All right, friends, welcome back to the second segment here of Huntsville Sports Weekly. I'm Rob Hipp alongside Josh Criswell, and joining us today, head coach Rodney Southern of the Huntsville Hornets. Coach Southern, can you hear us? How are you doing today, sir?
We're good. I can hear you well.
Awesome. Well, Coach, thanks for joining us today. So we're Josh and I, this is our 8th episode now of Huntsville Sports Weekly, where we talk about what's going on throughout Huntsville, and we couldn't think of a better guest to have on today. Of course, Coach, you go through the practice or the scrimmage, if you will, at Lufkin 2 weeks ago, and then the Nederland game. They weren't able to play due to COVID, but we still had that public practice. A lot of folks showed up. I would almost think that there was maybe about 200 people or so there. Of course, we streamed that as well, but now finally the kids going to be able to hit the field, get a little action in. Coming up this Friday, 7 p.m. at Willis. Coach, kind of talk a little bit about the mindset through those first 2 practices or scrimmages, if you will.
Well, I think the mindset was really good till last Wednesday. Obviously, when you get the news that a team is canceling on you, and you don't really have a lot of options at that point, especially with all the things that are going on in our society and with all the COVID-19 stuff. So, but I think they bounced back. We had the opportunity to go to Sam Houston Friday night and do some live situational stuff, which was the best situation that we could do at that point, because we could not find another team that we could get together with to get a game in. So disappointment, I think, Wednesday. I think by Friday they were good. We brought them in Saturday morning and worked out just like we would have played a game. We've got our academic stuff out of the way for now. So I think we're in a really good place, but, obviously we need to play a game.
Right.
Well, Coach, go ahead, Josh.
No, I was just going to say, with everything kind of came together really late last week, I guess late Wednesday mornings when the official word came down. But, For you, what was the thing that impressed you the most about the way the team handled everything? I'm sure for them, it's been almost a year at this point since they've played another team, and I'm sure they're disappointed. But, what were your thoughts with just the way the kids responded to everything that was thrown at them last week?
Well, I think this group of kids is kind of unique. Every year you kind of look and say, what's the identity of your football team? This group of kids, especially the seniors, because there's only 18 of them, they understand the ups and downs of a high school football season and how to handle circumstances that sometimes are out of your control. And I think our coaching staff is probably as mature in terms of the group of men we've got. So I think the combination of those two things, I think the kids handled it well. They don't say a whole lot about stuff like this because I think they know, we're doing the best we can for them in terms of schedule and trying to get them ready. So I think they handled it well, other than having to hit each other again, which is always tough when you get to this point in the season.
Well, Coach, the kids starting to really come together. We've talked about so many times, and people know this, that the senior class, you lost over 30 seniors this year. I know we haven't had that game yet, so it's kind of hard to get a true feel. But now through this practice and scrimmage, how do you feel that the team is really starting to come together and some of those leadership roles now starting to come out as you've got a lot of juniors on the team that are having to step up as well? Talk about those things, Coach.
Well, probably the biggest thing is we kind of looked this spring and this summer, and we picked 15 guys that we felt like, and they're not all seniors, that we felt like were the voice of our football team, for lack of a better word. Not necessarily always captains, but guys that have invested a lot in this program, and talking to them about, circumstances. There's only so many things in a game that you can control. And there's so many things in a life situation like 2020's given us that, that we can't control some of that. But I thought our kids, just from a leadership standpoint, when I bring those guys in, they communicate, they understand, and they're smart. One thing I've always told our staff, and I've learned this over 30 plus years of doing this, you can't fool kids. You can do a lot of different things and you can throw a lot of situations at them, but you can't fool them. They can see through that stuff because they want to know why lots of times. And years ago, we never told them why. We just said, this is what we're doing. And, I have a lot more dialogue with that group of guys. So, we feel really good about, obviously, the seniors that have played significant amounts of football for us. They're fine. It's some of the young guys that, Friday night's going to be their first time to walk on a varsity football field. We actually had a young guy the other night, even at Sam Houston. He was a little bit concerned and not sure what was going to happen. So you're going to have some of that, but you're also going to have those veteran guys, and you're going to have playmakers who are naturally just going to step up and make plays.
Coach, you mentioned some of those new guys coming in, and obviously you know what to expect from your returning seniors like, Cody McLaren, the Bobino brothers, and then Quatarian Riles and Sebastian Patterson. But, who are some of those new faces, guys that are either playing their first time on varsity or guys that played limited action in previous years? Who are some of those new faces that the fans should look out for this season?
Well, I think, when you look defensively, that's where most of our experience is. Jadarian White is back with us, and he'll start at safety for us. And, of course, he's been in our program a long time. He's been in our athletic program and obviously also had a lot of success in basketball. Ethan Miner will start at corner. Ethan's another guy that played a lot last year on the JV and has stepped into a role. And, and, of course, our down four guys are the guys that that we're going to lean on defensively. Now you go to the other side, everybody's basically new. Jose Cruz, one of our offensive linemen. Trey Garrett, one of our offensive linemen that are older, senior and junior, that we're going to rely on up front because the other three guys at times may be sophomores or potentially even a freshman down the road. So Justin Butcher, who's played 2 years on the varsity now, is going to be a guy we're going to rely on. in the receiving core. But, all those other guys are young, but I don't know that the hype is going to be too much for them. I think they understand that. But, again, they've never played a varsity snap. And, of course, AJ, at quarterback is going to be a guy that has some varsity experience, and it's just going to be a matter of now, he's the guy, and you got to be the guy every day when you're the quarterback.
Right. And you mentioned AJ, quarterback, Coach. How big is it for him, for a guy that's going to be preparing for his first full season starting as, the leader of that offense? How big is it for him to have guys at receiver, like Justin Butcher and, in a lot of cases, guys who he's been throwing to since he was a seventh grader?
Well, I think two things for him. Number one, playing last year and, and going into the last game of the year against Brian Rudder. I mean, we have to win that game to get in the playoffs. And I think a lot of times as a backup quarterback, you don't have a lot of the pressure that the starter does. Well, so he's been in the big games. Jordan Woodbury is another receiver, and, of course, Butcher, who both played varsity last year. Matter of fact, Jordan caught a touchdown in this game a year ago. So, he knows those guys. He's played with them. It's just a matter of getting familiar with not just those guys, but the guys that he may have to go to that are not as experienced, but also being able to use his legs. If he gets in a situation where he doesn't feel comfortable, then, AJ's a tremendous athlete, so he can always tuck it and run. And we just want him to make sure he does that the right way and don't take hits that you don't have to take.
Well, we're talking to head coach Rodney Southern of the Huntsville Hornets, also the athletic director. Coach, appreciate your time today. Just one final question from me before Josh has a final question as well. Of course, Friday coming up, Willis on the road, 7 p.m. start. Coach, first game, we wanted to see that first game. Of course, this last Friday, that didn't happen. So now this is really the first game. Tell us just a little bit about, not giving away the game plan, but just some of the things we should expect from Willis, and then also the ticketing situation and how all that works. This community is so involved with the Huntsville Hornets. They're passionate, the fans. Just kind of let us know a little bit about those things, Coach.
Well, the first thing, Willis obviously had the opportunity to play last week. They lost a tough game probably in about the final 3 minutes to Tomball. They actually caught a ball that was going in for a touchdown and fumbled it on the 3-yard line, and ended up being a back-breaking play for them. And Tomball ended up scoring again to beat them 39-27. I think Willis is – Coach Wall's a lot like we were in year 2 here. You're still trying to get the things in place that you want in place. And obviously moving up to 6A from a number standpoint is always a tough thing to do. But, that they are a dangerous football team because, number one, they've played and we haven't. Number two, they've always got athletes. They've got a young man, number 7, who is all over the football field, offensively, defensively. He's their kick returner. He's probably the most dangerous guy they've got on their football team because he does so many things for them. Quarterback, of course, is a senior that's coming back. Very experienced football team in terms of the guys who have been in that program now for, at least 2 years under Coach Wall. So, always a concern when you are in the situation we're in, not just because it's a rivalry and it's a 6A team, but they've played a game and we haven't. Ticking wise, everything each week is going to be a little bit different depending on what the opponent we play, especially when we're on the road, as far as what they're doing with their tickets. There are a lot of different entities out there that people are using. You can call our athletic office if people are still looking. We only have a set number of tickets because obviously we're at 50% capacity on the visitor side between our band, cheer, dance, football. There are a lot of people to go around, but there's only a certain number of tickets. So if you call our athletic office, Miss Lisa Blackburn, who handles a lot of that for me, can tell you exactly how that will work each week because, again, next week will be different than it was this week for Willis. So people just have to be patient, but they also need to know that, as we go through this year, you're going to need to get tickets on Monday and Tuesday if the link is open. Again, it's going to depend on, whether we're at home or on the road.
Coach, one last question for you. We talked about it a little bit earlier this week at practice, but aside from picking up that first win to start the 2020 season, what's one thing you would like to see your team accomplish out there on Friday night?
Well, anytime your first game, and the old coaching cliche is you make the most improvement between week 1 and week 2. Well, technically we didn't get a week 1, so we're in week 1 of week 2 again. So the big thing is for us, kids understand what the expectation level is here now. We've put that expectation hopefully even higher this year, especially with our non-district schedule, the way it was set. I want to see a clean game. This game last year, there were a lot of penalties. A lot of them were ours. A lot of them were theirs. But a clean game execution-wise, and probably in certain circumstances, just understanding, okay, what's the situation from a football standpoint? I hope our kids, and I know a lot of them that have the experience understand that, but if a situation happens and we haven't practiced it, because obviously I can't prepare them for everything that could happen in a game, is how well do we handle that and then bounce back from whether it's a good situation or a bad one.
All right. Well, Coach, we appreciate your time today. Looking forward to the game on Friday. I'll drop by and catch up with you on Thursday, of course. But, Coach, we appreciate it. Any final comments before we let you go today, Coach?
No, just hope we can get to Friday and we can kick a ball off at 7 o'clock.
You bet. Well, good luck on Friday, Coach. Thanks for your time today. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks a bunch.
Once again, that was head coach Rodney Southern, also the athletic director here for Huntsville. Josh, always great to hear from him, and, excited. We've got that first game coming up, and we'll see what happens, after a scrimmage and a practice. And you're going to be down on the sidelines, man. Talk about that experience. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to be doing the highlights as usual. And, one of the things that we'll be bringing to y'all at the item is, we found a way to embed that feed of all the video highlights that I send out throughout the game. So in addition to, we'll have everything set up on one page. We'll be sending it out on Friday, but, you can watch the full game live broadcast. And then right below it, you'll have my Twitter feed that has all the video highlights throughout the game that'll be uploaded. So, excited to have that for y'all. And, it's going to be fun. I had a lot of fun doing the sideline reporting for y'all down there at the Lufkin scrimmage, and just, looking forward to continuing doing that all season.
Yeah, it was a great layer, and just great to have your expertise down there, Josh, and know what's going on. Coach had mentioned earlier ticketing information. I believe this is the right number, 936-435-6100. Ask for the athletic office if you have any questions. Again, just call the number and ask for the athletic office. And if you got any questions about ticketing, of course, that's one way to do it. You can also visit the website at hornetnation.org. Once again, that website is hornetnation.org. Lisa has done a tremendous job just keeping that up to date. And Josh, I wanted to talk about that really quick before we break, and then we'll go into our third segment. But man, if you look at a lot of high school websites, especially athletic websites throughout the state, there's some good ones, and then you've got some really great ones. HornetNation.org, Lisa has done a great job keeping that up to date with information. It's a pretty impressive website at the high school level.
Oh, 100%. I use it every single week to make sure I'm not, missing one of the, it seems like a dozen events going on every single week over there.
Awesome. Well, we'll step aside. We'll take a brief break. When we come back, it's segment 3. As we wrap it up, this is Huntsville Sports Weekly. I'm Rob Hipp with Josh Criswell. We'll be right back here in just a few moments. Stay with us, friends. All right, segment 3 here on Huntsville Sports Weekly. I'm Rob Hipp, sports director with KSAM, and Josh Criswell, the sports editor with the Huntsville Item. Thank you for joining us here this afternoon in our final segment. Josh, finally, a couple of weeks ago, a little bit of good news that a lot of folks have been waiting on. That schedule, the Southland Conference schedule, of course, that's letting us know when those Bearcats are going to be out on the field, and kind of a weird, unique schedule this year. We're not going to see from my understanding, no non-conference games. It's all going to be conference games, and it looks like only 2 games a month starting in February, March, and then April. We'll open up the season on the road in San Antonio at the University of the Incarnate Word on February the 20th. Josh, going to be pretty unique this year. I'm excited, though, to see kind of how this all plays out and how it's going to work.
I don't think there is no non-conference opponents on the books. I think they're leaving that possibility open, but it doesn't sound like anything on that front is going to be decided anytime soon. We want to get to the spring, and the last thing you want to do is add a bunch of games that you have to end up potentially canceling, for whatever reason. So 6 games on the schedule, and like you said, a very, very unique schedule. Only 7 Southland Conference teams going to be competing in the spring with Houston Baptist, SFA, Abilene Christian, and Central Arkansas opting out of the spring to play a fall season. But, one of the big things that stands out to me, obviously, is Central Arkansas opting in and into the fall and out of the spring. That kind of seems like it opens the door for the Bearcats, who were picked number 2 in the conference behind UCA, to kind of be the front runner in the Southland this spring.
Yeah, it's going to be I wanted to mention this, and I don't want to give any misinformation, but you just mentioned ACU, Abilene Christian, and Central Arkansas, of course, Stephen F. Austin and Houston Baptist all electing to play. And, we're seeing them play. They've played their non-conference games. They're continuing to play. It's my understanding that because of that, they will not be eligible for a Southland Conference title. However, they could still be an at-large to get into the FCS championship. Josh, just share some of your knowledge with that and kind of how that works.
I'm not too familiar with as far as that aspect, but from what I understand, it sounds like at least from, SFA obviously isn't eligible for the postseason because of APR academic penalties. But UCA, it sounds like they have no intention of, playing a spring season or anything like that. So it sounds like UCA is going all in on the fall. I'm not 100% sure on Houston Baptist and Abilene Christian. But I would also say on that front, I don't think those 2 teams are really the biggest threats, I guess you would say, to get in the postseason. But UCA was one that was kind of a bit of a surprise for me. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into it, and no denying the exposure they've gotten these past few weeks. But definitely a bit of a head scratcher to kind of take yourself out of the running, where in a lot of people's opinion, you were going to be the best, national title contender, if not one, easily 1A, 1B, as representing the Southland with that automatic playoff bid.
Yeah, well, it's good chances this season for Sam Houston, your Bearcats, to really make a stand in the Southland Conference. Again, that action starting February the 20th at the University of Incarnate Word in San Antonio. Of course, we'll have the games on the air at KSAM 101.7. And Josh, you'll do an excellent job, as always, keeping up to date with what's happening there with the Huntsville item and what you guys do. But then we look ahead, we go 1 week ahead. We'll be back at home at Bowers on February the 27th, facing southeastern Louisiana. In that area, southeastern, maybe not hit as hard, of course, as our friends at McNeese, but still our hearts are with everyone in Louisiana that's been affected by Hurricane Laura. There's still a lot of cleanup going on in that area, but southeastern Louisiana here at home. And then, Josh, a bit of a break, as we'll have a couple of weeks. Then it's March the 13th versus Nicholls, so back-to-back home games here at Bowers. And then the next Saturday, the 20th at Lamar. So it looks like, Josh, there's going to be 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. I mean, how do you think that plays into the psyche of these players? That's just you're going to have a lot of downtime in between games.
It's going to be tough, but I also feel like it's going to be tough for everybody that's doing it. So I think the biggest thing is, especially at Sam Houston State, one thing we've seen from the beginning is they seem like they're definitely – of all teams in the Southland Conference, as much, if not more than anyone, they've been very health conscious, and they've been very, understanding the fact that, the science is the science, and that, you have to proceed cautiously with those things. And, the scheduling kind of goes along with that. You have those built-in bye weeks the way you do, because that way it frees you up to play games later in case you have a COVID outbreak with one of the teams, and then all of a sudden you're not having to extend the season or forfeit games, God forbid that situation occurs. So not ideal for sure, but at the same time, everyone in the conference is dealing with it. And I think, with the leadership coming back, don't lose really anybody, and probably are going to have the best defense in the country this spring, if not the best, top 3 or 4 easily. So I think they're probably just as well equipped to handle this, probably more than anyone in the conference.
Yeah, excited to see that defense get back out there under Coach Carlin. Last year we saw arguably one of the best defenses, of course, in the FCS, but I would even argue to say that one of the best in the entire Division I colleges. We saw Sam Houston run through games, not allowing opponents to score, and then they're just kind of having some troubling moments towards the end of the season. But this year, poised for another good season. We'll see what can happen, and hopefully, getting into a playoff situation. We talk about the Southland Conference, 58 years of history with the Southland Conference. Again, that play starting on February the 20th. And the NCAA was releasing some information, of course, that we will have the championship game. It will continue at Frisco's Toyota Stadium. So some stability there, some things that folks are used to, a little bit of normalcy. It's going to take place May the 15th and 16th, Josh. You think about all the sports, not just football, but everything that's going to happen within that 100 days. I want to think that there's probably 120 events happening in 100 days or something like that. It's going to be a little bit of madness, and my heart goes out to the athletic directors across the nation, of course in the Southland as well, that are going to have to navigate through that. That's a lot of work and logistics that's going to go into play, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we looked at it a couple months back whenever the possibility of pushing everything to the spring became a possibility. And there's a chance that you're going to have basketball games, volleyball games, basketball, softball, football, soccer, all going on within a 3 or 4 day span. So, it's going to be a college sports fans paradise out there this spring. And, for us, I'm really looking forward to the opportunity. Obviously, it's a little bit, bittersweet not being able to have any Sam Houston State football to cover this fall. But, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Don't to have it every year, but for 1 year, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to have 8 or so months of football to cover and cheer about and that whole thing.
I'm talking more about the Southland Conference, specifically the Bearcats of Sam Houston State, a 6-game season, if you will, starting again on February the 20th. Single round robin type games where each team will get 3 home games, 3 away games. And Josh, you think about that break in between. That break is actually a good thing. It's going to play into the players. They're going to have to adjust to it. But the good news is if there needs to be any schedule changes or adjustments, that 2 weeks of downtime, if you will, in between games is going to allow for any type of scheduling or flexibility changes. I think that's a really good move on the NCAA's part.
Yeah, definitely. And for the Southland in particular, it's kind of allowed us the opportunity to kind of have a few different weekends where maybe you have 1 or 2 games that are going to be featured and spotlighted that maybe get, a little bit more attention. And I guess one thing I wanted to hit on real quick is I, last week ran through the schedule and kind of pinpointed, just a few games to keep an eye on, around the league. And for Sam Houston State in particular, I had 2 of them. Sam Houston State versus UIW, obviously that February 20th conference opener is going to be a big one. Not just because it's the first game of the year. It's going to be a big game for both teams' title hopes because those are 2 teams, especially with UCA out, that are going to be figuring to fight for that Southland auto bid and potentially an at-large if they're one of those lucky few to get one. But, UIW has great coach and Eric Morris over there, as well as the 2018 Southland Freshman of the Year and John Copeland. So, between John Copeland for UIW and then Eric Schmid coming back, almost set, I think second highest Sam Houston State passing performance last year against UIW. So excited to see those 2 go head to head in what could be the best quarterback duel of the season in the Southland. And then obviously the other one you have to look at is going to be March 13th. At home against Nichols. And Nichols probably going to want revenge after being shut out 17-0 last season at Bowers. And it's going to be a big one in terms of the Southland title race. I think at this point in time, everyone's pointing to Sam Houston State and Nichols as those 2 teams to beat in the Southland. For Nichols, it's going to be an interesting season. Lose Chase Forcade, one of the greatest Southland Conference quarterbacks ever. And also a really great player on the other side of the ball as well. But, they bring in Lindsey Scott, a transfer who's been at LSU, Mizzou, a former Gatorade Louisiana Player of the Year, as a state champion at Zachary High School just outside of Baton Rouge. So a lot of potential there Nichols to potentially reload and maybe be, maybe not better because Chase Forcade is one of the all-time greats in the conference, but there's a good chance that offense is going to be more explosive, with Lindsey Scott slinging the ball out there to some really talented receivers. So March 13th at Bauer Stadium could very well serve as a de facto Southland championship game. But really excited about everything going on. And, I have a feeling that Sam Houston State, come those last couple weeks, they're going to be right there, if not at the top of that Southland title race.
Well, Josh, just a few final, statements here from me. This weekend would have been, it's my understanding, the 95th annual Battle of the Piney Woods. That's not going to happen. And so the fourth longest running rivalry in the state of Texas goes all the way back to 1923. That not happening. We got a big event happening here in Huntsville, of course, Fair on the Square. So I'm excited about that. But, no Battle of the Piney Woods this season. And that's just something that folks have been so accustomed to here in the Huntsville area. And of course, for Stephen F. Austin as well. So hopefully next year we can see that rivalry resume and pick back up. We look at the last 3 games of the season: March the 20th at Lamar on the road, April the 1st at Northwestern State, and then to close things out on April the 10th, it'll be versus McNeese here at home. So, yeah, Josh, bummed about the Battle of the Piney Woods, but that's the way it goes, and hopefully we'll get through this. And I did want to say one final thing. Many of you in the community know Kyle Bernard. He has done such wonderful work with Sam Houston State for many years with their marketing and his leadership, bringing exposure to the university. Kyle, we wish you well. He has taken a job at UCA. And Kyle, we love you, man, and we appreciate all that you've done. In fact, Kyle was one of the first guys that I met on the basketball bus last year. And so I got to chat with Kyle a little bit and talk to him, but just a tremendous asset to this community. He not only was involved, of course, with Sam Houston State and done a wonderful job with their marketing program, but he was very active in the community. And that's what makes Huntsville such a wonderful and unique place to be, is because you have folks like that, yeah, they work at the university, of course, Josh, but so active with the chamber and serving there with the board and being a part of this community. We're going to miss him. He did a great job.
Absolutely going to miss him, but super happy for Kyle and for him to have, this new opportunity for him. And, for me, I absolutely love Huntsville, but if I was going to go anywhere else within the conference, I would have to say that Conway and that Central Arkansas region, would definitely be up there in my top 2 or 3 choices. So I'm sure he's going to love it out there, and hopefully we'll see him around, at these Southland events here in the future.
Josh, quick question before we go. You're talking about UCA, purple and gray field. What are your thoughts on that, man? That was pretty cool last year.
It's polarizing. I don't feel as strongly about it as most people. I know a lot of people hate it. I know a lot of people think it's unique. I kind of lean closer towards the other end, but I also know that if you're, a team that probably cheers for other schools in Arkansas or, has been around the Southland for maybe a little bit longer than I have, maybe have allegiances to these teams and don't just cover them, I'm sure that they might feel a certain way. It's definitely a good good material for those that want to troll on social media. But I don't hate it too much. Not my favorite thing in the world, but I guess there are more egregious things like that all blue Boise. So I'm not too mad about them for it.
Yeah, well, let's say, had an opportunity to go there last year, and I just want to say their hospitality has always been so great. And, it was cool. One final thought that I had about that and just their facility there in Conway, it's really cool because on the visitor side, you actually have dorms that are right behind it. And if you're on like the 4th and 5th floor of those dorms, your window may actually look down into the stadium. Now, if you're below that, your window is looking behind some seats. And then on top of that, I don't want to get this wrong, but it's my understanding that it may be the only college in the country that actually has a retirement community on campus. So there is a senior living center on campus. And part of the deal is, from what I was told by an administrator there, was those folks get tickets to come to the games. How cool is that, man?
I had no idea. That is pretty neat. I'll take your word on it.
Well, Josh, any final comments before we go today? It's been another fun edition here of Huntsville Sports Weekly, my friend.
No, not at all. But we just, we appreciate all y'all for joining us. And as always, just go to itemonline.com/sports. We'll have your highlights and everything throughout the night. And of course, all the reactions the next day, and then coverage from that first full pad scrimmage on Saturday out at Bauer Stadium. So, that's all I have for you today. Rob, I'll toss it back to you.
Awesome. Well, Josh, I appreciate your time. Couldn't do the show without you, man. Excited here for episode 8. Looking forward to episode 9 next week. Want to remind you, though, we've got that game, Huntsville Hornets at Willis, 7 o'clock. Make sure to get a hold of the school if you're still looking for tickets. And they've got all the procedures about how all that works. We'll see you out there. I'm sure the gates will open a little bit early. Remember to be safe, social distant, do all that kind of stuff so we can keep football rolling. Josh, as always, appreciate you and our audience. And I want to remind everybody, as I do every single broadcast, that we're not strong enough alone to make it on our own, friends. We need each other. Provide a word of encouragement. Lend a hand of support. Somebody out there today needs you. Good afternoon, and God bless Huntsville. We'll check you next time.
See you next time.